what's up? Thanks for tuning in with me today. About a year ago I made a video comparing the Fuji X100V to the Leica Q2, which at the time I had just bought very recently. And back then I very clearly stated that I did prefer the images that came straight out of my Fuji X100V to the images straight out of my Leica Q2 by a long shot. Since then a lot has happened though, and by a lot I mean that Leica has released a massive firmware update which also did add massive improvements for this camera's JPEG quality. So if we were to put Leica's and Fuji's JPEGs head to head against each other today, who would win? Let's find out. Just before we actually compare these two systems though, let's quickly talk about why JPEGs do matter and why everyone benefits from having better JPEGs. First of all, there is no doubt that RAW files are far superior to JPEGs when it comes to maintaining the most amount of data in your images. So if you do like to edit and tweak your images in post, RAW files are definitely the way to go. I used to edit all of my images back in my Canon days, and I've gotten back into editing my photos in Lightroom now that I primarily use the Leica Q2 for my photography. Editing your photos can certainly be fun, and it is also a great way to stylize your photos and to get the most out of them. But on the other hand, all of that obviously takes up a lot of time and effort, and also these huge RAW files are a storage nightmare. With this Leica Q2, which pumps out 47 megapixel images, each RAW photo is about 80 megabytes in size. So shooting about 12 images almost fills up 1 gigabyte of space. That shit adds up quickly. And yes, obviously you can go through your photos and delete the ones that you don't want to take, but honestly, who's got time for that? Also, while I do like editing my photos and I don't spend too much time on it myself, regardless of how fast you edit, just using your JPEGs will always be faster. Aside from all of that, as Samuel from the YouTube channel Samuel Street Life pointed out in one of his videos about the Leica Q2, having good JPEGs is also just useful because it gives you a better glimpse of your photo's potential while you're taking them. And that in turn simply makes shooting more fun. So even if you don't care about the JPEGs as files, you probably still care about how the camera portrays any given scene on your display or your EVF. So in short, you want that stuff to look good to make shooting easier and more fun at the same time. Also, and this is probably not just me, there are occasions when I simply do want to get good looking photos straight out of camera and I do not want to go through the tedious process of editing them all in post. Like with family get-togethers for example, I simply want to take good photos and I want to send them off without any of that hassle. With that out of the way, let's talk about why Fujifilm is so damn good at this. And the reason is actually quite simple, and it's called recipes. For starters, Fujifilm offers a bunch of so-called film simulations which, as the name suggests, try to emulate the look you used to get with your analog camera with certain types of film back in the days. I honestly thought that this was a bit of a gimmick before I got my first own Fuji camera, but this is just such a neat feature. Think of it, if you will, as a sort of built-in Lightroom preset. Most of the simulations add a good amount of character, but without being too spicy and too stylized, though some are a bit more heavy-handed. If that's not good enough for you and you really want to nerd out, you can go deep in Fuji's menu systems and customize your JPEG settings till your heart's content. There are endless options, from fine tweaking the white balance to stuff you've probably never even heard of. And best of all, once you've found settings that you like, you can save them as a recipe or preset, if you will. And all of that will ensure that you will get A, great photos without going through the process of editing them, and B, you will also get a very consistent look. I also went through that whole custom recipe process, and if you're interested in the custom recipe that I used for like 95% of the images that I shot with any of my Fujifilm cameras, here you go. Okay, so by now it should be very clear that I'm very fond of Fujifilm's JPEGs. So then, what does Leica has to offer? Let's take a look. So when I first got my Leica Q2, and I've already hinted at that in the introduction to this video, I was honestly a bit shocked by how bad the JPEGs looked straight out of the camera. And I mean, it's a bit of an overstatement saying that they were bad, but it was how I felt at the time. And mind you, when I say that the images look bad, I'm not talking about the sharpness, I'm not talking about the bokeh, I'm not talking about high ISO performance or any of those technical features. I'm simply talking about the character of their photos and how visually pleasing they were to me. So that means that it is certainly a highly subjective matter. But still, on many occasions, especially with artificial lights around, the auto-white balance would be completely off. And even when it technically wasn't, I felt that the oranges and reds, especially in warm light sources, felt unnaturally cold. Now, I have no scientific knowledge to explain any of that. That is just my opinion. And aside from that, I also found it hard to expose my images correctly. The visual representation of my images or the scene I was shooting on my display was so contrasty that most of the time it would look like the highlights were blown out and the shadows were underexposed. And the metering and the auto exposure really was no help either. So I just had to pray that I somehow got the exposure right, which on many occasions I didn't. So in short, I really didn't like the JPEGs at all at the beginning. So since I wasn't ready to completely give up on the Leica Q2 and on all of its remarkable features, I simply switched over to once again editing most of my images in Lightroom in post. And I did achieve some pretty good results, if I do say so myself. But this summer, Leica released the firmware update 4.0, and with that update they added some features which worked wonders on the JPEGs and how the camera operates overall. First, they added a new metering mode which exposes for your highlights. This is now the metering mode that I use the most because, especially when you're shooting RAW, you can really recover a lot of data from your shadows with the Q2's files, but if you blow out the highlights, they are gone. Secondly, they also added an intelligent dynamic range feature, which has several settings, and what it does is that it gives your JPEGs a more dynamic appearance. In short, it lifts the shadows and drops the highlights, just as you probably would while editing the image in post. Again, you can turn this feature off if you want that dramatic, contrasty look, but most of the time it's really nice to have. And those two features combined made exposing your image correctly just so much easier. Now added on top of that, you also do get some ways to tweak the way your JPEGs look. These are very basic though, but you do at least get to choose between a standard, vivid and natural profile, plus some black and white ones. It's nothing compared to Fuji's level of customization, but it's nice to have nonetheless. And on the positive side, it is also a whole lot less confusing and less intimidating to get into. With all of that out of the way though, let's look at some images and you get to guess which ones were shot with the Fuji and which ones were shot with the Leica. So in conclusion, I still do think that Fuji has a leg up on Leica when it comes to the wow factor of their JPEGs. At the same time though, and that is true for my own custom Fuji recipe as well, with all of that internal processing, the Fuji images tend to look a bit more artificial. With the Leica's JPEGs though, especially now after that last update, I think they do a better job at walking that fine line of having a bit of processing in their JPEGs, but keeping it very clean and very natural looking at the same time. It took a while to win me over, but it's honestly a quality that I've come to enjoy a lot. At the end of the day though, it's all personal preference of course, and I do think that both systems do a great job in their own right. Me personally, and I honestly can't quite believe that I'm actually saying this, but I do think that by now I actually prefer these JPEGs that come straight out of the Q2. But then again, since I do now edit most of my favorite images in post anyway, I do not care about getting that wow factor straight out of camera as much anymore. So yeah, there's that. I do hope that this video has been mildly interesting to you. Let me know which images you preferred, and if you do want to see more of my shots, feel free to hop over to Instagram, linked in the description below, to follow me over there, and subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want to see more videos like this or other videos related to EDC, camera, tech, and all of that good stuff. Also, a thumbs up on this video would be much appreciated, as that shows me if people get some value out of the stuff that I put out. But anyway, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.